Welcome. Now, I believe that the ruler trick, which I've advocated for many years, is pretty well known. However, I'm very disheartened by the number of times that I see it misdescribed or shown badly. So I want to go and cover it today. The traditionalists tend not to like it. They have a habit of coming up with all sorts of spurious reasons for not doing it, or for why it's a bad thing, or why it doesn't work. The more adventurous, like Lee Nielsen, Rob Cosman, Tom Fidgin, and Chris Schwartz, to name a few, enjoy using it and benefit from it. I'm going to do a practical example, and I'm going to take the blade out of this little rebate block plane to demonstrate with. Now, taking the blade out of rebate and shoulder planes is a little tricky because we particularly don't want to knock the corners of the blade. So there's usually some twisting and very careful lifting involved. And there we have it. Sharpening on the bench is not considered to be good practice, so I shall move to my sharpening bench. Right, I'll just take my 800 stone here. The tick tells me that it's flat. And this is one of my lovely stones where I've glued them all together so as I can use up the last bit. So I'm just going to create a little paste on the stone. As I keep saying, this is not flattening. This is just to create the paste that you see here. Now I'm going to pop the blade into the Lee Nielsen honing guide. And I really like this because it's always the same projection for the same angle. The other great thing about it is that finger pressure here is sufficient to clamp you firmly. Now here I'm trying to get a wire edge. Very near. That is a small wire edge, or hook, or burr, whatever you want to call it, all the way across the blade. Now I shorten the projection by about 2 to 3 mil, and I don't really have to measure that, except that I've messed it up, so perhaps I will. Go a little shorter than that. Clean the wheel. Clean the tool so as not to contaminate the polishing stone. Now what I have here is an Ohishi polishing stone. These are interesting stones because they don't need to be soaked like my old king stones here. These will work just with a spray of water. And this 10,000 grit polishing stone is very nice in my opinion. Now because I have tipped up 2 or 3 degrees, it will literally only take me 3 strokes to polish the tip of this blade. And they're quite gentle strokes. That's the advantage of changing angle. I I don't have to polish the whole of the 800 bevel. Now I'm going to take the Nagura and create a little bit of paste on the stone. You see how it cleans away the previous metal deposits from the sharpening. Now, for the ruler trick, you don't want this paste to be too wet. I don't like to find water on top of my ruler. That almost certainly ensures that it's going to move around. So, if you're very lucky, you may persuade the ruler to stick in the mud, but it's probably much safer to hold on to it. Now, I use a particular kind of ruler. It's a narrow ruler, as you can see, and it's 0.5 millimetre thick, 0.5 of a millimetre. And I've done some trigonometry, and when a blade is sitting propped up on the 0.5 mil ruler, the angle that we impose on the back of the blade is 2/3 of 1 degree, which is really very little. A lot of people want to tell me that this is a back bevel and that the back bevel is going to cause problems with the chip breaker fit, for instance, and it's not so. It's a negligible back bevel, and when I prepare my chip breakers, I have 1.5 degrees of clearance angle on the underside of the lip. So I get a perfect fit no matter what position the chip breaker's in. Now, here we go. There is a wire edge. I probably want to draw that onto the stone 2 or 3 times. I don't like to trap a wire edge underneath the blade. Now, 2 fingers there, perhaps 20 strokes for a normal sharpening, unless your blade's been very abused. And you notice that I go off the edge of the stone and I don't come onto the edge of the stone more than 10 millimeters. Because if I did come very close to the ruler, the angle would get steeper and steeper, which I don't want. So this is really quite simple, quick, and very effective. Now, almost always, if I have a big wire edge, I will see it come off on the sponge cloth, or possibly on the towel, which I dry the blade with. If I were to see any wire edge left, I would know that something had gone astray. Now, many people like to strop, but what I keep pointing out is that the grit size of the particles in these polishing stones is probably finer than most people's stropping paste. I don't need to strop. The wire edge is perfectly polished away. And those are some of the reasons why I think the ruler trick's wonderful. We'll try and get a close-up to show you exactly what's happening here. Now, you've seen the little 1 millimeter band of high polish which stretches across the cutting edge of this blade. I can really see no point in trying to polish the whole of this area, as we were told in the past. I'm not trying to make a mirror, I'm trying to get a sharp edge. Now, you may also have seen in the close-up that some of the manufacturer's surface grinding scratches are still present just at the edge of the polished band. But because the polished band is at a slight angle, they've been removed by the time we get to the edge. Now, that's very difficult to show. I think you can imagine it. I can see it quite clearly with my little 40 times microscope. So, the polish is where we want it. We avoid stiction, you notice. I remember when I first started using Japanese waterstones and I was polishing backs, they used to stick in the mud frequently and in an irritating manner. And that may be one of the reasons why I started to use this technique. However, there is a much more compelling argument. If we think of a traditional sharpening, it requires the stone to be perfectly flat and the back of the tool to be perfectly flat for the wire edge to be honed away. And it's quite clear from the number of people who enjoy stropping as a final stage that this doesn't really happen very often. The probability of honing away the wire edge is massively increased by tipping this up at little 2/3 of a degree on the ruler, because the contact area is so much smaller, and I find that it's very rare for me to get a sharpening failure. Now I think it's possible that I've come to the end. But what I want to say is, if you do the ruler trick correctly, if you do it on a fine polishing stone, such as an 8,000 or 10,000 grit Japanese waterstone, you will get the most stunning results.